favor. Open doors and favor. Open doors and favor. Open doors and favor. What has been hard shall become easy. What has been difficult shall become easy. This night, this night, this night, this night, I release unto you the spirit and the power of momentum. Somebody shout momentum, momentum, momentum. Your velocity is getting ready to change. Your velocity, your velocity, your velocity is getting ready to change. Your speed, your speed, your speed, your tempo, your tempo. Some of you have been walking, but now you shall be running. Some of you have been walking, but now you shall be running. Some of you have been walking, but now you shall be. Some of you have been walking, but now you shall walk. Pick up your speed. Pick it up. Pick it up, saith God. Pick it up. Pick it up, saith God. Pick it up. Pick it up. Depression, drop, 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 drop. Heaviness, drop, drop, drop. Discouragement, fall, fall, fall. This is the day. This is the hour. You're being shifted into momentum. Say it, God. 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 The wind of the Lord is behind you. The wind of the Lord is behind you. The wind of the Lord is behind you. The wind of the Lord is behind you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy Midweek Momentum Day. We're so excited to be with you guys on another Wednesday morning. You know the drill. Give me some hearts, some likes. Let me know you can hear me, that I'm coming in clearly, that everything's good on my end before we go, as those seasoned saints would say, another further. Let me know you can hear me in the comments. Say good morning to me. You know, I always get nervous about shouting out names. I definitely don't want to miss anyone, but I see you all in the room already. Tag a friend, share this out, let people know that we're live and we're about to shift into, like our countdown says, momentum. We're going to take that midweek. If you're tired, if your week's been crazy, we're going to get into the word and get some encouragement to push our week forward in strength and in power. So heart this up, tag a friend, share it out. While you're doing that, I want to do a couple of things. Hey everyone, I see you coming in. Perfect. I want to do a couple of things. First thing I want to do, of course, you know what I always do. I want to invite you to church, guys. We have been having amazing services, amazing encounters. I love our community so much. Pastor Mel spoke with our Freedom partners and members last night in our group, and it was just so encouraging to see how much they genuinely love each other. Something I always say is we do life in real life. It's not just church where all we have in common is church, but we're actually intentional about checking on each other, championing each other, celebrating each other, right? Like we do life in real life. And if you're looking for a space to pursue freedom, but if you're also looking for a space to find family and purpose and acceptance, I want you to join us. I want you to be my guest on Saturday, 5 p.m. Worship and the Word goes up every Saturday. Saturday, 5 p.m., we have worship. Pastor Mel's been bringing amazing words this entire month. He's going to wrap up our series on Saturday. I'm excited, and we have our worship leader, Drea, back, and it's going to be crazy in our worship. 5 p.m., you can join us virtually on Facebook or YouTube, but if you're in the Las Vegas area, I want you to come in person. I want you to be in the room where it happens, right? Be in the room where it happens, 1203 East Charleston Boulevard, Suite B110. 1203 East Charleston Boulevard, Suite B110. The next thing I want to tell you guys, and we'll probably hear us talking about it for the next couple of times we're live and joining you, I want to tell you guys that our Freedom Revival is coming up. Yes, it's that time. We're going to be going into revival together as a community. I'm so excited to be a part of that. I want you to take a look at this flyer. I'm going to put the registration link in our comments, and I want you to please, please, please join us for Freedom Revival. It's going to be May 21st, 5 p.m. We're going to be streaming virtually, but if you want to be in the room, we have limited space, so you need to register. You need to register, reserve your spot. Don't be a crazy person. Don't wait till the last minute. Do it now. The link's in the comments. You can register. You can join us and be a part of what God is doing. We have Pastor Cameron Washington coming all the way from Philly with a word. I saw he posted the other day how excited he is and that he has a word for us, and I'm excited to receive that word. I'm excited to be a part of what God is doing and what he wants to do in us and through us. We were talking about that as well last night in our community group about revival and how excited we are about it and how we're already starting to prepare our hearts, prepare our minds for what God wants to do. So those are the two things I really wanted to make mention to you. Was one, come to church on Saturday. Two, make preparations now, get your registration spot linked in, and join us on Saturday for church. But then register and make sure you're locked in with a spot to join us on May 21st for revival. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. So here we are, Midweek Momentum, another Wednesday. PM has been making announcements, and I want to confirm and remind us all this is actually our last Midweek Momentum on a Wednesday morning for a while. Don't worry about it. We're still going to connect with you guys virtually. We still have a lot of things going on. So you want to make sure you're following us on Facebook, following us on Instagram. You're plugged in. If you've never filled out a Linktree link to make sure that you're connected with us, I want you to do that as well to make sure you're getting the text blast when we're live. You're understanding all of those things. If you aren't connected, leave us a comment. Let us know, hey, I'm not connected. I need to get alerts. I need to get notifications so you can know what we're doing next, what's going on with us next. But I'm excited to share with you the word today. But make sure you're plugged in with us and you're getting our notifications so you can see what happens after today. So we've been having an amazing month, guys, in this series on Calvary. It's been an amazing time. We said in the beginning of the month that our intention and our focus was to renew our, what did we say? Our passion, our reverence, and our gratitude for the cross, right? So we've been doing that, and I hope and I pray that you have seen that in your personal life, that this series, as we've been talking about Calvary, as we've talked about the sacrifice of Jesus, we've talked about the cross, I hope and my prayer is that you have seen a new level of appreciation, a new level of reverence and honor for Calvary and honor for the cross. And I hope that whatever is going on in your life, whatever circumstances have had you distracted or shaken a little bit, I'm hoping that you now see it through the lens of the finished work of the cross. And like Pastor Mel's been saying to our community, that you're able to speak resurrection power over any circumstance, anything. I hope that your faith has increased. I know mine has. If you missed any of our sessions, whether it's with Midweek Momentum, whether it was Saturday evening services, you can catch all of those and get caught up of what we've been talking about this entire month, because it's been so encouraging to me. But let's get into today's word. So something Pastor Mel said on Saturday, I wrote it down in my notes that I really, really loved. He said, I put this in my personal notes because I'm a student, right? So I wrote down what Pastor Mel said. He said, Calvary should increase your faith in the instructions of God. Calvary should increase your faith in the instructions of God. So when we're faced with impossibility, right? When we're faced with contradictions, like we've been talking about all month, my prayer and my hope is that now when you're faced with these things, you're able to see it, and faith and hope rises in your life above anything else. And because we have renewed reverence for Calvary, because we have this new place, we see resurrection power from a different perspective. I'm hoping that your faith has increased as you look through the lens of Calvary. So hopefully Calvary in this whole series has increased your faith to follow the instruction. That's what we've been on this week. So this week, and as we go into this last week of the month, we're wrapping up this series. We've been talking about faith to follow. That's been the theme of the week. Faith to follow. when we say we're letting faith and hope rise above anything else, we're saying above anything else, above any other circumstance, any other distraction, the way we think, the way we feel. We're allowing God to be the standard and God to take the highest place of our life and our faith. We have the faith to follow God no matter what. Come on, put that in the chat. I'm following God no matter what. Pastor Mel said on Saturday, the faith in God requires a mind shift. Our faith in God requires a mind shift. It's not simply enough to change your position, right? You can change the way you're going, but if you don't change the way you think, you're bound to detour and go back to what you knew before. You're bound to go back to what held you hostage, what had you bound. If you don't allow yourself to have a mind shift, Kim said on Saturday, and I hope that you got that word. If you didn't, write it down now. Faith in God requires a mind shift. I can't just change the way I walk. I got to change the way I think as well. It requires your entire mind to shift. We looked at Exodus chapter 16 on Saturday, and on Exodus chapter 16, we saw the Israelites and Moses journeying in the wilderness. They were in what we're going to call today the in-between, right? They're not in Egypt, they're not quite to the promised land, and you find them murmuring, you find them complaining, you find them telling Moses, at least in Egypt we had this, at least in Egypt we had that. And God said, I heard your murmuring, I heard your complaining, and I'm going to rain down bread from heaven. He was going to give them meat to eat. He's going to also give them specific instructions, right? He said, I'm going to also give them specific instructions to test them and to see if they're able to follow the instructions. Come on. And so for the sake of time, we'll just summarize. But they were journeying, and God gave them these miracles. God said he's going to rain down bread and manna from heaven, give them instructions to make sure that they can follow instructions. What he's specifically telling them here was that he was going to give them instruction to see how well they steward their miracle, right? He's giving them a set of instructions to test and see not just if you'll follow my instruction, but I want to see how well you steward your miracle, right? It's a miraculous thing for bread and quail to fall from heaven. It's a miraculous thing when there is nothing around. I'm in the wilderness, it is desolate, it is barren, I am hungry, I am thirsty, and out of nowhere provision hits my life, right? That's a miracle. But he said, I want you to handle it a certain way. I don't want you to take too much. I don't want you to keep any left over. And he was kind of giving them different specific ways he wanted them to handle the situation. And the reason being, he said, I just want to see, one, will you follow the instruction? Two, how well can you steward your miracle? So they start off all right. They start off following instruction, but after a while they stop following instruction. Then they'd fall back in line and they'd say, okay, I'm going to follow the instruction. Then they'd get restless and impatient and tired, and then they'd stop following the instruction. And this goes back and forth with the children of Israel the entire journey, right? They go back and forth, and such are some of us, right? We thank God for Calvary because of grace and mercy. The difference is God sustains us in our inconsistencies. Because of grace and mercy, God holds us tightly in our inconsistencies. The children of Israel didn't have that same benefit. So they had this place of lack because of unbelief. They had this place of torment because of unbelief. We don't always follow instructions and we veer off in our own way. And our omnipresent God, who's around us, in us, through us, all of the things, right? The moment we choose to pivot, he's right there. I'm so grateful for an ever-present God, right? He's always right there. But the children of Israel find themselves in the wilderness and they're being inconsistent, right? We talked about unbelief this month. They were struggling with unbelief. They were struggling with holding on to what God told them to do. They were struggling with having enough faith to follow the instructions. They would say, this doesn't make sense. I'm going to build a fake God and worship him in the wilderness and see if this false idol can get me to my promised land faster. They always had a backup plan. How many of us know God's plan is the only plan? God's plan is the right plan. It's the sure plan. It's the guaranteed plan to get me to the promise. But we've all found ourselves in positions where we've tried to have our own backup plan. When the timing of God doesn't line up, when the things of God don't look like it's coming through in the way and in the speed that I want it to, we'll call a friend, we'll call an ex, We'll call our mama. We'll go try to see if I can get a side hustle, do this, do that, do this, do that. We find ourselves trying to create backup plans. We have to have our focus on him and trust and be confident that God's plan is the only plan. Put that in the chat. God's plan is the only plan. We're going into a season of life coming out of this series where we're no longer holding on to our backup plan. There is no backup plan. When God gives me instruction, when God gives me something, I'm going to let my faith be sure, and I'm going to lean into his plan and follow his instruction, because that is the only plan. God's plan is plan A, and there is no plan B, right? God's plan is the only plan. So as we end and get ready to wrap this series, we're ending out the month, I want to know, and I want to ask you all this morning, are you tired yet? Right? Are you tired yet? What do I mean? My spiritual parents, they prayed this prayer over me. And now when I pray with people that trust me with their journey to freedom, I pray this prayer over them. It's a very simple prayer. It says this: Lord, bring them to their end and quickly. Lord, bring them to their end and quickly. And that's it. That's the prayer. The whole prayer and the reasoning behind it is this: when you have any inkling, the tiniest ounce of feeling like maybe I have another way, maybe in my own strength I can accomplish, maybe if I just call my uncle, whoever, maybe if I just call my aunt so-and-so and ask to borrow some money, maybe if you have this tiny space where there's still pride. You have this tiny space of hyper-independence within yourself. There's this tiny place of being able to have the idea that I can do this on my own. Whenever that's present, freedom is not, right? Anytime we think we can still do this on our own, anytime we still think that there's a backup plan that I have that works better than the plan of God, it doesn't work. So that's why a lot of times in heart freedom and deliverance, when you identify someone who still has a backup plan in their back pocket or in their hand, we pray the simple prayer: Lord, bring them to their end and quickly. And that's not to say I want you just to suffer. It's because we know the reality is until we hit rock bottom, for a lot of us, that's when we finally give up and say, God, you're right. God, this is all I have. Take it all. I'm willing to follow you. Just like the Israelites in the wilderness, they had a backup plan. They had another idea. They had another way that they always thought was better. They even found themselves looking at Egypt, right? Their bondage, their slavery, and saying, maybe that wasn't so bad. At least in Egypt, I knew I would always have food. At least in Egypt, all my friends were there. There were cool pyramids. Sure, I was being tortured and beaten and all of these things. But maybe it wasn't so bad when we have these tiny little backup plans and all of these little things that we're still holding on to. It's easy to feel like this is enough. Where I am is enough. I don't even have to make it to the promised land. This is enough. Maybe I should just turn back. Or maybe I should just stay here and never grow another further, right? Never go further than this. Maybe I will either regress or stay complacent, but I'm definitely not willing to progress because progression is uncomfortable, progression is inconvenient, progression takes too long. So that's why we say, Lord, bring me to my end and quickly. I don't want anything else. Bring me to the end of myself. Bring me to the end of my pride, to the end of my thought process, to the end of my fear, to the end of my shame. Bring me to the end of my flesh. Bring me to the end of everything that stops me from reaching the promised land. Like Pastor Mel said, he taught us during this series, the impossible thing will always require an impossible God, right? You remember that? The impossible thing will always require an impossible God. The Israelites were stuck in the in-between, between bondage and promise, because they continued to hold on to the tiny inkling that maybe Egypt wasn't so bad. Maybe bondage wasn't so bad. Maybe if I just go back. Maybe if I just give up. Maybe if I just build this altar in the wilderness and worship someone else. I remember in Egypt, they were worshiping these gods and they had gold, they had food, they had mansions. Maybe if I try that, I know what God said. I know what Moses is saying that God said, but maybe if there's another way. Maybe if there's another way. No, if you're stuck in a wilderness situation, the only plan A is God. The same God that got them through the Red Sea, right? Is the same God that's going to get you to the promised land. But it's easy when you're stuck in the in-between to get confused. So be encouraged today. God's plan is the only plan. It's only plan A. We get stuck and think maybe things aren't so bad. Maybe our group of friends, they weren't so bad. Maybe unhealthy relationships, they weren't so bad. Come on. Plan A is the only plan that matters. Let's see. Beautiful. So let's, I'm trying to look for my scripture. Sorry, guys. Wonderful. Here we go. Okay, so God's plan is the only plan. Plan A, right? What do we declare over, before I get to the scripture? What is it that we declare all the time when we are at church, right? We put our hand over our heart. I'm not a mistake. God still has a plan and a purpose for my life, right? God still has a plan and a purpose for my life. It takes faith to follow instructions that allow us to live it out. When we lack faith, and hold on to our backup plan, we hold on to plan A, B, C, whatever it looks like, we find our way back into the in-between. There cannot be a backup plan. There can't be anything else. This is what I wanted to bring us to this morning. I had to find it. Sorry, y'all. So we talked about in passing on Saturday this. PM mentioned as he was wrapping up, the Israelites, when they were in the wilderness, their journey took longer than it was supposed to, right? We talked about that a little bit on Saturday. Do you know how long it took them? In total, 40 years. 40 years it took them in total to reach the promised land. Do you know how long it takes to get to Canaan from where they journeyed from? 11 days. 11 days it takes to get there. It took them 40 years. 11 days, it took them 40 years. So, let's see, 11-day journey, 2 years in, right? Let's do this. I'm going to summarize it for the sake of time. An 11-day journey, 2 years in, God was ready to give them access to their promised land, right? God was ready to give them access to their territory that he promised them when they were in Egypt, that he would rescue them and put them in this beautiful land. But the Israelites had their backup plans. They had their things that they wanted instead. They had fear, they had doubt, probably trauma from slavery, and so they didn't want to. God came to Moses and said, you've been in this wilderness, you've journeyed around this mountain long enough. It's time to pack up camp and go possess your land. Go occupy your territory. The Israelites said, that sounds all fine and dandy. Let me make a backup plan. So they said, let's send spies or scouts to go check it out first, because we don't know what we're going into. We don't want to go into there blindly. We want to know what's up. Who's in there? Who's all going to be there, right? So they send someone else. They send someone to go check. They send spies, and the spies come back afraid, all but like two, saying, maybe we shouldn't go in there. It's kind of crazy. Be careful. All of this stuff, right? So that grieved God. God became frustrated because here we are, an 11-day journey. An 11-day journey has taken you at this point 2 years. 2 years in. And I'm ready to give you your promise, and here you are still complaining. Here you are still doubting me. Here you are still questioning me. Here you are still lacking me, still holding on to your backup plan, still holding on to what you think is best. So, 2 years of craving the very thing that they've been rescued from, right? 2 years of this. So God then said, you know what? How about you take a seat here in the wilderness, and I'm going to have you sit just outside of your promise for 40 years. An 11-day journey, you're going to take a time out for 40 years. 40 years. Deuteronomy 1 is where you can find the summary, right? Deuteronomy 1 gives an account of Israel's history, about all of this journey into the promised land. And in verse 2 to about 3, this is the NIV, I believe. It says, normally it takes only 11 days to travel from Mount Sinai to Kadesh Barnea, going by way of Mount Seir. But 40 years after the Israelites left Egypt, on the first day of the 11th month, Moses addressed the people of Israel, telling them everything the Lord had commanded him to say. Here's the thing, friends. God waited for a whole generation of doubters and complainers to fall off to raise up a generation that would believe his word and follow his instruction. We're talking 40 years. You think the same people that were rescued from Egypt are the same people that are going into the promise? No, when we see in Deuteronomy 1 and Moses is giving an account and he's retelling this story, he's speaking to a whole new generation. He's like, let me talk to you about what your mama did and your grandma did and your uncles and your aunties. And when we were almost to the promise, this is what they did. So now let me tell you so we can get it right this time. So we can get it right this time. Y'all listen, please. Please listen, right? And he's mirroring this. God is mirroring this in our life today. He's mirroring the same pattern in your life today. This is what he's saying. God is so faithful and so kind enough to allow you to sit in the in-between. He's allowing you to sit just outside of your promise to allow everything else to fall away, to allow every backup plan, to allow every distraction, even if it's a friendship, if it's a relationship, if it's a family member, you'll sit right outside of your promise until it all falls away so that he can trust you with the instructions to enter into your promised land. Come on. But I believe even more than that this morning, God is saying to us, you've circled this mountain long enough. You've been around this mountain long enough, right? 11-day journey turned into 40 years. Come on. Some of us have been on a 40+ year journey, have we not? Some of us have been on a 40-year+ journey. I don't know what your life has looked like. I've been on a 30-year journey. I haven't been on a 40-year journey just yet. But listen, some of us have been on a very long journey. And I believe that God says to us, you've circled this mountain long enough. You've been in the wilderness long enough. It's time to pack up camp and occupy your territory. And this time, I believe we're ready. This time, we understand and we will follow the instruction, understanding that the plan of God is right. The plan of God is sure. The plan of God is the only plan. There is no backup plan. It's time to do away with the backup plan. It's time to make sure that everything else falls away so that I can enter into my promise. We have to get to a place where we understand that Jesus and the plan of Jesus, the sacrifice of Jesus, the resurrection life of Jesus was always the plan. And when we access that and we say, this is enough, I receive salvation, I receive resurrection power, I receive resurrection life, I'm a new creature in Christ. What did we talk about on Friday? I too have been raised up with Christ, and I too sit at the right hand of my Father. It gives you a new perspective and a new faith to follow the instructions, understanding that this is the only plan. The finished work of the cross was plan A. There is no plan B. There is no plan B. We have to do away with our plans. Sure, maybe your backup plan feels safe and familiar, but it's keeping you in your wilderness. Maybe it makes more sense to you to fall back on what you know and it's familiar, but it's keeping you in the wilderness. You've circled and you've journeyed in the wilderness long enough. The same way God said to the Israelites, he's speaking to us this morning. You've journeyed around this thing long enough, friends, and it's time to pack up camp and it's time to enter into the territory. 11 days or 40 years. 11 days or 40 years. The ball is quite literally in your court, friends. The ball is quite literally in your court. You know, we can give you all of the resources. We can spend this whole month talking about resurrection power, resurrection life. We can talk about unbelief. We can talk about faith. And we can go and we can go and we can pray and we can contend. But the ball is in your court now. What backup plans do you have? What is the thing that you fall back on? What is the thing that you rest and lean into? You know, if we're honest, it's not always the Father, right? Sometimes we always have a backup plan. We live in Vegas, are we not? It's an all-in season. I'm all in. All of my chips are on the table. I have nothing in my pocket, nothing up my sleeve, nothing in the backup. I'm all in. I'm all in so that I can see my promise and see my turnaround. I don't want to be like the Israelites, wandering and journeying in the wilderness over something that could have been so simple. Psalmist Lauren said what? But you'd rather make it hard, right? Come on. We have to be all in this season to see the manifestation. We're journeying going into this May 21st revival, right? If we want to see this place of freedom, this place of deliverance, this place of access, right, in the kingdom, we have to be a culture and a generation of people who say, I'm all in. There's no backup plan. There's nothing that I hold on to. There's nothing that I hold more closely than the plan and the purpose of my Father. I love you guys. That's all we've got for this morning. I hope that this blessed you. I hope that you'll take this and meditate on it the rest of the week. I want to see you at church this Saturday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're on Facebook and YouTube Live every Saturday at 5 p.m. And we're also in person. If you can get there, I'm telling you, you want to be in the room where it happens. 1203 East Charleston Boulevard, Suite B110, 1203 East Charleston Boulevard, Suite B110. And then the next thing you need to do is make sure you head to our page. You find that Eventbrite link, you get what you need, and you get in there and reserve your spot. If you're in the Las Vegas area for Revival, May 21st, 5 p.m., you want to be in the room for that wonderful experience and encounter that we're going to have. And of course, if you're not local, you can always watch it virtually. But if you can be there in person, don't wait till the last minute. I'm telling you, you want to reserve your spot now. Okay? I love you guys. Have a great week. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.